Chapter 9. An odd moment of complete silence hung over the glade. It was as if the supernatural wind had swept through the place and sucked all sound. Newt had read the message aloud for those who couldn't see the paper, but instead of erupting in confusion, the gladers all stood dumbfounded. Thomas would have expected shouts and questions, arguments, but no one said a word. All eyes were glued to the girl, now lying there as if asleep, her chest rising and falling to shallow breaths. Contrary to their original conclusion, she was very much alive. Newt stood, and Thomas hoped for an explanation, a voice of reason, a calming presence. But all he did was a crumple of note in his fists, veins popping from his skin as he squeezed in, and Thomas's heart sank. He wasn't sure why, but the situation made him very uneasy. Albie cupped his hands around his mouth. Mad Jacks! Thomas wondered what that word meant. He knew he'd heard it before, but then he was abruptly knocked aside. Two older boys were pushing their way through the crowd. One was tall with a busket his nose the size of a fat lemon. The other was short and actually had gray hair almost conquering the black of the sides of his head. Thomas could only hope they'd make sense of everything. So what do we do with her? The taller one asked, his voice much higher pitched than Thomas expected. How should I know? Albie said. You two shanks are medjacks. Figure it out. Medjacks. Thomas repeated his head, a light going on. They must be the closest thing they have to doctors. The short one was already on the ground, kneeling beside the girl, feeling for her pulse, leaning over to listen to her heartbeat. Who said Clint has first shot over? Someone yelled from the crowd. There were several barks of laughter. I'm next. How can they joke around? Thomas thought. The girl's half dead. He felt sick inside. Abby's eyes narrowed. His mouth folded into a tight grin and didn't look like it had anything to do with humor. If anybody touches this girl, Abby said, you're gonna spend the night sleeping with the grievers in the maze. Banished. No questions. He paused, turning in a slow circle as he wanted everybody person to see his face. Nobody better touch her. Nobody. It was the first time Thomas had actually liked hearing someone coming from Albie's mouth. The short guy who referred to Albie as Jack Clint, if the spectator have been correct, stood up from his examination. She seems fine, breathing okay, normal heartbeat, though it's a bit slow. You guess it's as good as mine, but I'd say she's in a coma. Jeff, let's take her to the homestead. His partner, Jeff, stood over to grab her arms while Clint told her on her feet. Thomas wished he could do more than watch. With every passing second, he doubted more and more what he'd said earlier was true. She did seem familiar. He felt a connection to her, though it was impossible to grasp in his mind. The idea of making him nervous, and he looked around as if someone might heard his thoughts. On the count of three, Jeff, the taller Medjack, was saying, his tall frame looked ridiculous, bent in half, like a praying mantis. 1, 2, 3. They lifted her with a quick jerk, almost throwing her up in the air. She was obviously a lot lighter than they thought, and Thomas almost shouted at them to be more careful. Guess we'll have to see what she does, Jeff said to no one in particular. We can feed her soupy stuff if she doesn't want to wake up soon. Just watch her closely, Newt said. Must be something special about her or they wouldn't have sent her here. Thomas' gut clenched. He knew that he and the girl were connected somehow. They'd come a day apart. She seemed familiar. He had a consuming urge to become a runner despite leaning toward more terrible things. What did it all mean? Albie leaned over to look at her face once more before they carried her off. Put her next to Ben's room, and keep a watch on her day and night. Nothing better happen without me knowing about it. I don't care if she talks in her sleep or takes a clunk. You come tell me. Yeah, Jeff mutters. Then he and Clint shuffled off to the homestead. the girl's body bouncing as they went, and the other gladers finally started to talk about it, scattering theory bubbles through her air. Thomas watched all this in mute contemplation. This strange connection he felt wasn't his alone. The not so valid accusations thrown at him on a few minutes before proved that the others suspected something too. But what? He was already completely confused. Being blamed for things only made him worse. As if reading his thoughts, Abby walked over and grabbed him up by his shoulder. You ain't never seen her before? He asked. Thomas hesitated before he answered. No, that I remember. He hoped his shaky voice didn't betray his doubts. What if he did know her somehow? What would that mean? You sure? You prodded, standing right behind Albie. I don't think so. Why are you guys grilling me like this? All Thomas wanted right then was for night to fall, so he could be alone, go to sleep. Albie shook his head, then turned back to Newt, realizing his grip on Thomas' shoulder. Something's whacked, called the gathering. He said it quietly enough that Thomas didn't think anyone else heard, but it sounded ominous. Then the leader and Newt walked off, and Thomas was relieved to see Chuck coming his way. Chuck, what's a gathering? He looked proud to know the answer. It's when the keepers meet. The only call when when something weird or terrible happens. Well, I guess today fits both of those categories pretty well. Thomas' stomach rumbled, interrupting his thoughts. I didn't finish my breakfast. Can I go somewhere? I'm starving. Chuck looked up at him, his eyebrows raised. Seeing the chick wig made you hungry? He must be more psycho than I thought. Thomas sighed. Just give me some food. The kitchen was small, but he had everything one needed to make a hearty meal. A big oven, a microwave, a dishwasher, a couple of tables. It seemed odd and run down but clean. Seeing the applicants and the familiar layout made Thomas feel as his memories, real solid memories, were right on the edge of his mind. But again, essential parts were missing. Names, faces, place, events. It was all maddening. Take a seat, Chuck said. I'll get you something. But I swear this is the last time. Just be glad Fry Pan isn't around. He hates when we raid his fridge. Thomas was relieved they were alone. As Chuck fumbled through with his dishes and things from the fridge, Thomas pulled out a wooden chair from a small plastic table and sat down. This is crazy. How can this be for real? Someone sent us here. Somebody evil. Chuck paused, quite complaining. Just accept it and don't think about it. Yeah, right. Thomas looked up out a window. It seemed a good time to bring up one of those million questions bouncing off through his brain. So where does the electricity come from? Who cares? I'll take it. What a surprise. Thomas thought. No answer. Chuck brought two plates with sandwiches and carrots over to the table. The bread was thick and white. The carrots are sparkling bright orange. Thomas's hurt begged him to hurry. He picked up his sandwich and started devouring it. Oh man, he mumbled with all his mouth. At least food is good. Thomas was able to eat the rest of his meal without another word from Chuck. And he was lucky that the kid didn't feel like talking, because despite the complete weirdness of everything that happened within Tom's known reach of memory, he felt calm again, his stomach full, his energy replenished, his mind thankful for a few moments of silence. He decided that from then he'd quit whining and deal things. After his last bite, Thomas sat in his chair. So, Chuck, he said as he wiped his mouth with a napkin. What do I have to do to be a runner? Not that again. Chuck looked up from his plate, where he had been picking up the crumbs. He let out a low, gurgly burp that made Thomas cringe. Albie said I'd start my trial soon as with the different keepers. So when I get a shot with the runners, Thomas waited patiently to get some sort of actual information from Chuck. Chuck rolled his eyes dramatically, leaving no doubt as to how stupid an idea he thought would that be. They should be back in a few hours. Why don't they ask them? Thomas ignored his horse Sam. He digged deeper. What do they do when they get back every night? What's up with the concrete building maps? They mean as soon as they get back, before they forget anything. Maps? Thomas was confused. But if they're trying to make a map, Don't they have paper to write on while they're out there? Maps. They intrigued him more than anything else he'd heard in a while. It was the first thing suggesting a potential solution of the predicament. Predicament. Of course they do. But there's still stuff they need to talk about and discuss and analyze all that clunk plus. The boy rolled his eyes. They spend most of their time running, not writing. That's what they're called runners. Thomas thought about the runners and the maps. Could the maze be so massive, huge that after 2 years they still can't find a way out? It seemed impossible. But then he remembered what Albie said about the moving walls. If all of them were sentenced to live here until they died, sentenced. The word made him feel a rush of panic. Then a spark of hope the meal had brought him fizzled with a silent hiss. Chuck, what if we're all criminals? I mean, what if we're murderers or something? Huh? Chuck looked up and him and he was a crazy person. Where did that happy thought come from? Think about it. Our memories are wiped. We live inside a place that seems to have no way out, surrounded by bloodthirsty monster guards. Doesn't that sound like a prison to you? As he said it out loud, it sounded more possible. Noza to his chest. I'm probably 12 years old, dude. Chuck pointed to his chest. I'm most 13. You really think I did something that would send me to a prison for the rest of my life? I don't care what you did or didn't do. Either way, you have been sent to prison. Doesn't it seem like a holiday to you? Oh man, I thought. Please let me be wrong. Chuck thought for a moment. Don't know. It's better than, yeah, I know, living in a pile of clunk. Thomas stood up and pushed his chair back under the table. He liked Chuck, but trying to be as intelligent conversation with him and impossible. Not to mention frustrating and irritating. Go and make yourselves another sandwich. I'm going exploring. See you tonight. He stepped out of the kitchen and into the courtyard before Chuck could offer him to join in. The glade had gone back to business as usual. People working their jobs, the doors of box closed, sun shining down. Any signs of the crazed girl bearing notes of doom had disappeared. Having had his tour cut short, he decided to take a walk around the glade on his own and get a better look of feeling of the place. He headed out to the northeast corner, towards the big rows of the tall green corn stalks that looked ready to harvest. There was other stuff, too. Tomatoes, lettuce, peas, and a lot more that Thomas didn't recognize. He took a deep breath, loving the fresh whiff of dirt and growing plants. He was almost positive the smell would bring back some sort of pleasant memory, but nothing came. As he got closer, he saw several boys were reading and picking up in small fields. One waved at him with a smile, an actual smile. Maybe this place won't be so bad at all, Thomas thought. Not everyone here can be a jerk. He took another deep breath of pleasant air and pulled himself through its thoughts. There were a lot more he wanted to see. Next was the southeast corner, where shabbily built wooden fences and several cows, goats, sheep, and pigs. No horses, though. That sucks, Thomas thought. Riders would definitely be faster than runners. As he approached, he figured he must dealt with animals in his life before the glade. Their smell, their sound, they seemed very familiar to him. The smell wasn't quite as nice as the crops, but still he imagined it could be a lot worse. As he explored the area, he realized more and more about how well the gladers kept up the place, how clean it was. He was impressed by how organized they must be, how hard they all must work. He could only imagine how truly horrific this place like this could be if everyone went lazy and stupid. Finally, he made it to the southwest quarter, near the forest. He was approaching the sprays, skeletal trees in front of the denser woods, and when he was startled by the blur of movement at his feet, followed by a hurried set of clacking sounds. He looked down just in time to see a sudden flash of something metallic, a toy rat, scurrying past him and towards the small forest. The thing was already 3 meters away by the time he realized it wasn't a rat at all. It was more like a lizard, more like at least 6 legs scuttled down the silver torso along a beetle blade. It's how they watched us, Albie had said. He caught a gleam of red light sweeping the ground in front of the creature as if it came from his eyes. Logic told him to be his mind playing tricks on him. But he could be have sworn he said the word wicked scrawled down in his round back in large green letters. Something so strange had to be investigated. Thomas straightened after a scurrying spy. In a matter of seconds, he entered the thick copse of trees, and the world became dark.